So my musical background started when I was 5 years old, and I started taking tap dancing lessons. And I do believe that that has a lot to do with my rhythmic sensibility in my singing. And if you look at the careers of Steve Gadd, incredible drummer, started out as a tap dancer. Caterina Valente started out as a tap dancer, or it was part of her life and her musical background. I do believe that that's when I started coordinating and combining rhythm and movement and listening to the band. I was actually listening to what I was dancing to. Then my dancing progressed into jazz and ballet and point, and I also became a choreographer, which for me was a wonderful expressive outlet, and I loved being able to read the music that I was choreographing and make dance musical. Then when I was 7 years old, I started taking voice lessons and piano lessons. And I actually started accompanying myself. So I'm not a great piano player, and I don't think I learned all the basics very well, but I learned how to accompany myself with chord changes. So I was singing and playing, when I was in 4th grade. And I sang with my sister, which is when I started to learn to blend and to sing harmonies. So I was pretty young, and I realized that a real good blend at that point in your life was when you can't hear yourself. And you can really do that with family members because your voices are very similar. Moving on, I kind of quit music in junior high because I wasn't happy with the teacher there. But then in high school, I was recruited by the teacher. And he was truly one of my mentors, introduced me to the High Lows, Singers Unlimited, Swingle Singers, Antonio Carlos Jobim. And it was in high school that I learned to sing with a female trio, a select ensemble, sang in front of the big band. I was in all of the musicals, and I really thought that my path was going to be musical theater. I went on to Ithaca College to earn a BFA in acting, and kind of created my own musical theater degree. They didn't really have one when I was there. Now they do, a wonderful program, and I actually just taught a class to those musical theater students. It's kind of funny, so many things coming full circle. But in college, that's where I first started singing with the vocal jazz ensemble. And it was with Dave Riley, our mentor there, that he taught us the basics and the repertoire. We went into the recording studio. We did some jingle work. So I was truly introduced to the beginning of my profession in college, and it wasn't even part of my major. This was this extra class that I loved. It was the reason that I kept going back to school, back to Ithaca, was to be in that room and create that harmony and sing that music. It was truly my drug of choice, vocal jazz. I loved it. I was addicted to it, and it gave me so much pleasure. It was there that I met my colleague, Peter Eldridge, and Darman I met afterward. After I graduated, I met Darman there. But I also met my future husband in this ensemble. I met my future brother-in-law. It's kind of crazy that what a vortex Ithaca was for me, both professionally and personally. So after getting that degree and having that experience with the vocal jazz ensemble and Dave Riley, I moved to New York and thought I was going to pursue, my dream of the Great White Way. I thought I was going to be on Broadway. And I got as far as off-Broadway, choreographing. And I still have that dream. I never give up. And who knows, it might even be with New York Voices. But in New York, I had a day job, of course. and was continuing to take classes. I continued my education in acting and singing and dance while I got gigs, in regional theater and on cruise ships and dinner theater and that off-Broadway thing. But then it was Dave Riley that came back again and said, we have a chance to go to the North Sea Jazz Festival and the Montreux Festival. Would you be interested in being part of an alumni group? And I had always wanted to go overseas with this vocal jazz ensemble. I'd been dreaming about it, and so this was another dream come true. And we got there, and the response was pretty amazing to this post-college vocal jazz ensemble. We were a sextet at that time, backed by the band, my dance band that I worked with in college called Aurora, which had my brother-in-law and my husband in it. So these experiences were pretty terrific, and the responses were standing ovations, and we're like, wow, we might actually have something here. So when we came back to New York, those of us that decided to continue on with New York Voices, which was the name that Dave gave us, there were four of us at that point in time: Peter, Darman, Caprice, Fox, and myself. And at that point, we didn't want to be another Manhattan Transfer. So we thought, okay, let's have five voices, and let's build on the upper structure of the harmony and add a female voice. And at that point in time, we had lost our first soprano from that sextet, so I had to expand my range. And when you look at Darman Meter's arrangements, and you, especially in those early days with the 5 parts, and you see that upper structure, I didn't have those notes. And Darman was like, well, I guess you're gonna have to find them. So I found a teacher, and we built my voice, and I became a first soprano. And it's amazing. And that work took me into the recording studio and into movie scores and jingles. And I was one of the calls when I lived in New York for 16 years to sing those high notes. I mean, I actually sang one high note on a cruise ship commercial, and I earned the down payment of my house. It's really crazy. So New York Voices kept going, and we held auditions by invitation. And we found our 5th voice, which was Sarah Krieger at that time. And we made a couple records together and toured the world. And a few years after that, Caprice, no, it was Sarah, decided to move on and do other things, and we got Lauren Kinnan into the group, again, by another round of auditions by invitation. And we had people from all across the country and Canada that wanted to be in this group. We'd made a few records, we were on the radio, we were touring extensively around the world, and we found Lauren. And after a few years as a quintet, then Caprice decided to do something else, and we've been this quartet for over 20 years now. The group's been together for 28 years, longer than many marriages, we say. So I guess that's kind of the background of New York Voices and the history of the group and my musical background. Like I said, I was a dancer, a singer, a piano player, and was trying to find my way onto Broadway. And it was at some point during that venture, I was singing backgrounds for a teen pop star by the name of Debbie Gibson. I was doing New York Voices, and I was doing musical theater. And I had to decide. So at one point in the road, I left the singing backgrounds for the teen pop star, and I was doing New York Voices in theater. And then it came time to truly dedicate myself to New York Voices. And I don't know that I ever really thought about it, but we created our platform for ourselves. New York Voices is what we make it. And I wasn't being put into a mold of a part in a musical theater. Though I love it, and I watched the Tonys, it was a blast. And I do dream about that continuously. But to have this creative platform that I am 1/4 of is pretty astounding. And to know that I'm helping to continue the legacy of vocal jazz and create history in vocal jazz, I'm really, really proud of that. And I really do feel like it is part of my identity. It's part of who I am. I was destined to do this, though I didn't know it. So the origins of the group, when we first started, our musical goal was to bridge the gap between instrumental jazz and vocal jazz. Vocal jazz tends to get a bad rap and is sometimes frowned upon by some jazz instrumentalists. So we really wanted to validate what we did, and we were inspired by instrumentalists, not just vocalists. So we really did try to speak the same language and live under the umbrella of being a total and complete musician. And that is also the way that we teach. We all read. Darman plays saxophone, Peter plays piano. All of the arranging is done in-house. Darman does a bulk of that, but if Peter writes an original, or if Lauren writes an original, or if I have an idea, we kind of sit side by side and we go through all of these ideas. It takes time, but it feels good to have that kind of voice and that kind of expression in the group. So Darman, like I said, does a bulk of that arranging, and he calls us the rearrangers. You know, he'll get an idea and map it out, and we'll sing through it. And if it feels good, great. If we feel like there's another section that needs to happen, or something needs lyrics, or you know, whatever ideas we have for the group, we are allowed to voice them. We bring them to the table. We work them out when we have the time to do that. And it feels good to be a part of the process. Our first record deal we got in New York City after performing for 1 year in the city, which was pretty quick. You know, we put the group together, we went to Europe, we came back, we revamped a little bit. And then after that first gig in New York, which was with Dave Riley and Ithaca College at Town Hall. So we had a pretty prestigious gig in which we could invite agents, managers, producers, promoters. We were calling anyone and everyone at that point in time, because it wasn't truly the age of the internet at that point. So we were all sitting around in a room making phone calls, trying to get these big wigs to our big concert that we prepared for in New York with the Ithaca College Vocal Jazz Ensemble, and then the big band was there with Lou Tabakin. So it was a nice billing, and we did 4 or 5 tunes on that first concert, and there were enough people there, and we had made enough calls that we created a buzz, an initial buzz. And go figure, the woman that represented us for many years after that was in that audience. She saw our very first concert. She was on her feet, gave us a standing ovation. She saw something. And it was a year later that we were represented by her. But after that concert, we were then just performing in New York, and still making the phone call, still trying to get people to come see us. And it was at a club downtown. The name is escaping me, because it's certainly not the same name now. The club downtown that GRP Records, Dave Grusin, Larry Rosen, came to hear us. They were in the audience. And they heard the group. They'd known what we had been doing for the past year. And we had meetings, and we got a record deal. And it was that first record that Michael Abeni, who we also worked with a number of times after that in our career, he produced that first record for us. He produced the Christmas CD that we're on with GRP, and he most recently produced the CD that we did with the WDR Big Band out of Cologne, Germany. So the record industry is constantly changing. And we did 3 CDs. Our first one was an actual record with GRP. Then we moved to BMG, I believe. Again, and there were so many merges and people buying other labels. And we did a record with the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild out of Pittsburgh. We've done a contemporary classical CD with a company out on the West Coast. We've appeared as guests on many CDs. And our Christmas CD is on a label that we created with our very good friend and producer, Elliot Shiner. And that is called 5 Cent Records. So we have run the gamut from big time to getting caught in the cracks to switching labels 2 and 3 times to finally creating our own label. And we have a few projects in the works, and who knows where they will land. I recently put out my own solo CD myself with my husband. So yeah, the industry is constantly changing. Our music is, like I said, heavily instrumentally influenced, and it's also the way we teach. There's a lot of improvisation in what we do, a lot of vocalese with scat syllables. And I think it is probably more steeped in that instrumental jazz. You know, we never crossed over into the doo-wop kind of thing. There's a lot of original writing in New York Voices, and still continues to be. But of course, there are those parallels too, because people ask, you know, if they've never heard of New York Voices, you say, well, it's kind of like Manhattan Transfer, but different. But they have done, you know, their vocalese record, they've done their Brazilian record, they've done big band work, you know, orchestral work, Christmas work. So there are bound to be those similarities, but the differences, I would say, is the concentration on instrumental influence, improvisation from all of us, and original writing from all of us. I would say that would be the difference. And the basic sound. You know, when we record, we rarely double anything. It's 4 voices. And it's really what you hear is what you get. And there isn't anything we record that we can't do. I think I'm on point, that we can't do live. That's one of our focuses. Is like, if we record it, we got to be able to sing it. We've got to be able to duplicate this and you know, continue to make it better with its live legs. So that's kind of the difference, I would say. I think when we first started, we were primarily performance and recording. But as you well know, if you want to be a musician that eats in this world, you know, and that lives comfortably, you have to do many, many things. And the teaching just kind of came about for me personally. I started teaching in my later 20s when New York Voices was doing a gig in Boston at the Regatta Bar. I don't know if you know that venue, but you were actually on the floor with the audience, and there happened to be a table kind of behind me, very close to the stage. And I was wearing a dress at that point in my life that was backless and had these laces up the back. So this young singer was watching me sing from the back. And she came up afterward and she just looked at me and she said, "How do you do that?" And I said, "How do you do what?" She goes, "How do you breathe in your back? How do you do that?" I go, "Well, it's part of the way I learned, and it's the whole instrument." And she said, "I want to learn how to do that. Will you teach me?" And I said, "Well, I'm not a teacher and I've never done it before, but if you want to travel from New Hampshire to New York, you want to take lessons, you are more than welcome and we'll figure this out." So I did. And it was through that very first student who's gone on to make, records and teaches on her own. She's one of my dearest friends, that I developed my vocabulary to teach the vocal technique that I use to sing this material, this very challenging material for New York Voices. I can't speak for the other three, but we have all done master classes, workshops, clinics, lectures on our own, and then we started developing that language together as New York Voices. And it did take some time, but it was we did it on our feet, basically. When we were asked to do a master class, or there was a Q&A for New York Voices, Meet the New York Voices. We kind of developed it as we went along, and it's kind of crucial to our livelihood because we have been kept alive in some instances by the collegiate circuit and the high school circuit. And one of my dreams was to have this vocal jazz camp that we have together, that we started at Bowling Green, where I'm a artist in residence in Bowling Green, Ohio. And it was very successful for 7 years there. And this is our first year to move it to Ithaca, New York. And, our roots. So we're kind of going back home with what we have created. And so the education was not a forethought, but it was definitely something that was welcomed and embraced and created. And it feels really good to give back to a genre that has been so good to us. We've come full circle, going back to Ithaca. We are teaching the children of our friends. So we have been together longer than our students have been alive. So, and there aren't that many people doing what we do. And vocal jazz has a very small niche. So if you are true to this art form and you want to keep it alive, you have to give back. You have to teach. So it feels good. All four of us are, have different perspectives on how we do it and what we do. And I'd love to invite you to our camp and come check us out, because it's truly an experience. And we give as much to that teaching experience as we do to any recording or arrangement or concert. We are in 150%. It's probably one of the reasons we've lasted so long, because we all have that same work ethic, that same high standard, no matter what it is that we do. Oh, well, the agents are definitely part of this family, and you can't do everything yourself at this point in the game. We have an agent in New York, Adam Chernick, with ARC Agency. We have an agent in Cologne, Germany. Her name is Catherine Meyer with Just Jazz International. And as you mentioned, Marilyn Rosen does the fine arts and symphonic booking for us. And having those people on board, it's worth, every percentage that you pay, because when you're not doing that work, then you kind of get to think about the music, which is really important. But we are in the music business, so you have to balance everything. You have to balance your teaching, balance your performing, balance your writing. You're practicing. Making time for practicing at this point in the game, when you're married and you have a home and children and pets and everything else that you need to tend to. So it truly is a balancing game, and we are blessed to have these people that work with us and help us get the music to the people that want to hear it. and it is part of our livelihood. Yeah, I mean, I think anyone in the arts, these gentlemen in the room, that are helping me create this video for you, you have to love what you do if you are an artist and you're on this creative path. For me, it's you have to wake up every day and say, am I doing what I want to be doing with my life and with my time and my energy and my effort? Am I meant to do this on the planet? And I do believe that there are so many times when you meet your destiny and the universe affirms what it is that you're doing. And you have to be aware, and you have to be able to live comfortably with what it is that you choose to do. So that would be my message to anyone in a vocal jazz ensemble, and going out on your own and working with people that you love and that you respect. Right? There has to be this mutual respect and a level of communication. You have to learn how to talk to people because, everybody's vision of good art is different, of good music is different. We've lived a life of compromise for 28 years. And sometimes on that platform of compromise, you win, you lose. But ultimately, you have to be comfortable with what it is that you all agree upon. When all four of us agree, it's a magical moment. and you give and take, and you choose and you pick your battles wisely. Because sometimes you get what you want and sometimes you don't. And you ultimately say, okay, I can live with that, and you move on. But more times than not, we all have that same standard, and the music speaks for itself, because the music for us comes first. Oh, obstacles. Well, the business itself is an obstacle. And, maneuvering through that and staying alive and staying together, that's wild. Through, whatever human things you go through, romance, marriages, homeowning, raising children, money, they're all mountains to climb. And we've done it together, which is a really wonderful, wonderful thing, because not only are we colleagues in business, we are friends. Peter Eldridge is my son's godfather. Darman is one of the most amazing men to be in business with. Lauren and I have raised our children on the road together. And those are experiences that, you don't share with everyone. But I got to share it. I got to share my life and my career with three of the most amazing people on the planet that are doing wonderful things on their own and are also collectively making something that I'm so incredibly proud of. There have been some health issues we've had to deal with, but I don't want to get too personal. And we have managed to get the support we needed with road managers and musicians and promoters and agents, and we've dealt with that and overcome that. Changing record labels, creating record labels, doing this new business with our camps. We're starting a camp in Slovenia. And we didn't think that it was going to get off the ground, but miracle of miracles, on that last day when we said this is do or die day, people rushed to the registration page, and we had enough people to start this camp across the ocean, in Paquito, Slovenia, which is beautiful, but nobody knows about it. So there's one of those affirming actions that happened. And we're now gathering the music. People are coming from all over the world, from Taiwan, from Austria, from Germany, from the Netherlands, from the USA. They're coming to Slovenia to come together and make music for 6 days with New York Voices. We have a book out there of arrangements that was just published by Shawnee Press and Hal Leonard, and to get all of us to get all of that material together, sometimes it was like pulling teeth, but we did it, and it's out there. And I think the other big thing is creating the time right now for us to get together and rehearse. We all live in 4 corners of the United States. I'm in Ohio, Darman's in New Jersey, Lawrence goes between New York and Long Island, Peter's in New Hampshire. And he teaches full-time at Berkeley. We all have teaching positions. So juggling the schedules, juggling geography, and prioritizing everything so that we can make our deadlines, that's kind of huge. And no manager or agent is doing that for us. We do that ourselves. We do a lot for ourselves. We do our own wardrobe, our own makeup. We sell our own product. We are such an in-house, do-it-yourself kind of group that anything that we get from the outside world, we are so grateful for. Yes, of course, we've considered making music videos. And we actually did one in Japan years ago for Caravan for Panasonic. But those videos, they cost money, and we're a vocal jazz group. And we never had the revenue to do one of those high quality videos. Of course, now there's YouTube clips of us up there. We have, we did a wonderful concert in Montreal that we tried to put out on a DVD. But you have to get permission to do all of that for all the Paul Simon music. We have a DVD of our performance in Indonesia at the Java Jazz Festival, and of course you'll see footage of that. And Darman has been working on remixing that, and who knows if that'll ever come out. Yeah, we would love to do this, but it's yet another expense that. Yeah, we haven't met yet. Yeah, I mean, we have some footage that we just took with the Swingles from England, and we might be, using that as a little bit of an EPK. And we just did a concert for Dave Riley, a memorial concert for Dave Riley at Ithaca College with all of the ensembles there. And we're looking at that footage, and it's looking good. So we might be streaming some of that soon. But as far as, hiring a crew and getting out there and doing a real video, maybe for the next CD. Yeah, that came about as a dream of my brother-in-law's and my husband's and Paquito's. And Paquito had been a frequent guest at the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild, and Paquito loves vocal harmonies. He grew up in Cuba listening to it on the radio. And when Martin Ashby proposed this idea to Paquito for the label at the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild, Paquito jumped all over it. And the records from the Guild are live. So we learned 8 tunes, I think, for that project. And we had never performed them before. So it was a huge rehearsal process, a huge writing process. And I was a new mom at that time. So I guess if I had to change anything, first of all, I would change the title of the CD so that New York Voices was actually included in the Grammy winning. It was one word in the title that kept us from winning. I would probably change the timing of it and not be that new mother, because I had laryngitis. It was a form of like hysterical laryngitis just from stress and nerves the first 2 days of recording. So thank God we had 4 concerts, because my voice came back and we actually got, some quality recording by the end of the performances. But I guess that would be the only thing I would change, was to, have a little bit more time with the music, change my own personal calendar of recording it, and changing the title so that we were part of that Grammy category.